Most of the electricity currently used in Japan is generated by three types of power plants: nuclear, thermal, and hydroelectric. Each power plant has its advantages and disadvantages, but the common concerns are mainly negative effects on the global environment, such as radiation leakage, air pollution, and ecological impact. Electricity produced at each power plant is delivered at substations along the way to places where it is used at the appropriate voltage, with the voltage being lowered in stages depending on the intended use, such as railroads, large buildings, large factories, and general households. One important characteristic of electricity is that it is difficult to store, and even if a lot of electricity is generated, it will be wasted if it is not used. Therefore, it is necessary to always keep the amount of generation and consumption together and always maintain a balance between supply and demand. This imbalance between supply and demand can adversely affect facilities that use electricity, or in the worst case, cause a large-scale power outage. At present, it is a fact that existing electric power, such as nuclear power and thermal power, is sufficient to cover the electricity needs of all of Japan. However, it is also true that when we think about the future 100 or 200 years from now, we cannot say that it will be absolutely safe. This is because most existing power generation, such as nuclear power and thermal power, requires resources to generate electricity, and when these resources run out, power generation will cease. Energy used for power and fuel to generate electricity is called a primary energy and includes oil, coal, and natural gas. These resources are, of course, not infinite but finite, and it is said that even if we measure all the world's reserves, the resources will run out within 50 to 100 years. And if we focus on Japan, the problem is not only about resource reserves. As an island nation with few natural resources reserves, Japan relies on imports from abroad for most of its resources, and Japan's energy self-sufficiency rate in 2017 was a whopping 9.6%. More than 90% of Japan's resources are purchased from overseas. In addition, the fact that the resources needed to generate electricity are purchased from overseas means that the cost of those overseas resources is included in the electricity bill you are paying. In other words, you think you are paying for electricity generated in Japan, but the money is going to overseas companies. And recently, power generation from so-called renewable energy sources, such as wind and solar power, is gradually increasing. Although it would be a relief if electricity could be supplied throughout Japan from these renewable energy sources, the story is not that simple, and there are several issues to be addressed. A major reason why renewable energy is attracting attention but not replacing existing electricity is the principle of simultaneous equivalence, which states that supply and demand must be kept in balance at all times. Most renewable energy sources convert nature's bounty, such as wind and solar power, into energy, so they cannot generate more or less power to meet human demand. For example, it is not possible to say, let's generate more electricity in the summer because air conditioner use is increasing, or let's generate less electricity this winter because the winter is mild. Nevertheless, when we think about the future, power generation from renewable energy sources is an absolutely essential element, and it is also true that if these sources can be effectively utilized, they will bring great benefits to Japan and the region. Renewable energy includes not only solar and wind power, which often receive the most attention, but also geothermal power, small-scale hydroelectric power, biomass power, and other new energy applications that are being discovered every year. In order to realize this transition of renewable energies to main power sources, and make them sustainable, it will be necessary not only to strengthen the competitiveness of power generation costs and develop a business environment that supports long-term stable power generation, but also to adjust the balance with existing power sources such as nuclear and thermal power, and develop rules. And this power structure and plan based on the concept of shifting from existing power sources such as nuclear and thermal power to power mainly from renewable energy sources such as solar and wind power is collectively referred to as the digital grid plan. The digital grid is a system that changes the mechanism from supplying power from the existing power grid to making a small area self-sustaining, creating a distributed power supply on a scale that can stand on its own without depending on the existing power grid. The main reason why renewable energy has not been widely used has been that its production is not stable and supply and demand are not in balance. However, the digital grid system is based on a mechanism called asynchronous coordination, which makes it possible to complement each other in both directions while remaining independent of each other, resulting in a robust power system. Because this digital grid is a small area independent power source system, it can be introduced not only on a large scale, such as worldwide or nationally, but also on a so-called regional level, such as at the prefectural or municipal level. The region's adoption of a digital grid plan will bring a variety of benefits to the region. The first is that it can stop the outflow of local wealth outside the region. The current system relies on imports of resources from overseas, so even if electricity is generated locally, the money paid for that electricity flows out of the region and overseas. However, as renewable energy becomes the mainstream through the digital grid project, the production, use, purchase, and sale of electricity will be completed within the region, and local production for local consumption of electricity, which was previously impossible, will become a reality. In addition, since renewable energy is a system that converts nature's bounty into energy, so-called resources are no longer needed, and the money previously paid to purchase resources from overseas is no longer required. This eliminates the cost of the cost price included in the electricity bill and lowers the overall cost of electricity. As a result, companies and others that have been forced to economize up to now will be able to use electricity more proactively, thereby shifting the focus from saving to proactively. Furthermore, the introduction of digital grid routers will make it possible to switch to electricity from renewable energy sources without adversely affecting existing power grids, such as nuclear and thermal power. Nevertheless, it is impossible to switch everything to renewable energy sources immediately tomorrow, so for the time being we will be relying more and more on existing power. With the digital grid, it will be possible to use renewable energy for the main part and use existing power for the shortfall. In the past, there have been cases of large-scale power outages during earthquakes and other disasters. The Iburi East earthquake that occurred in Hokkaido was the first large-scale power outage in Japan that affected an entire area. If a large-scale power outage occurs throughout an area, there is a high possibility that important lifelines such as water, sewage, toilets, evacuation center facilities, and disaster prevention radio systems will be shut down in the event of a disaster. Even in such a disaster, the digital grid can switch to renewable energy sources to ensure lifelines by switching to renewable energy sources in the event of a disaster. If the digital grid project eliminates the need to purchase resources, lowers the cost of electricity, and enables local production for local consumption of electricity, local governments will be enriched as a result and will be able to afford the cost of urban development. A city that can afford to live in a more comfortable manner is a city that is easier to live in. This will lead to an increase in employment, which in turn will benefit local businesses, a virtuous cycle that will lead to the development of a more vibrant city. However, it is also true that there are various issues that need to be addressed if we are to suddenly move forward with the digital grid plan. Therefore, the digital grid plan is divided into 3 phases: short-term goals, medium-term goals, and long-term goals. First, the short-term goal is to gradually build the grid from where we can and gradually increase the percentage of renewable energy. Next, the medium-term goal is to further increase the proportion of renewable energy and to make a stable supply possible by expanding the renewable energy network that has been gradually expanded in the short-term goal into a network like the Internet. However, it will be necessary to rely on existing power sources in summer and winter, when the use of electricity is extremely high. The final, long-term goal is for each facility and household to produce their own electricity, and for this circle to further expand so that 100% of the electricity used can be supplied by renewable energy sources. This will lead to the realization of local production for local consumption, in which electricity produced in the community is used in the community, and thus to the creation of a vibrant city. Furthermore, since the digital grid is a renewable energy power supply system that can be constructed even in small units, there is no need to develop and operate large-scale power generation facilities as has been the case up to now. This makes it possible to construct power systems in areas that were previously difficult to reach without electricity, transforming inconvenient lifestyles and providing a more cultured and comfortable living environment. Globally, there are a number of developments that are encouraging the digital grid plan. These include the RE100 goal of 100% renewable energy for corporate electricity, decarbonization efforts aimed at achieving zero greenhouse gas emissions, and the spread of SDGs initiatives. This trend is also seen in Japan, where the government is shifting to measures to support regional energy. The Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry METI, the Ministry of the Environment MOEE, the Ministry of Land, Infrastructure, Transport and Tourism MLIT, the Ministry of Internal Affairs and Communications MIC, and others have launched a variety of projects in support for local energy-related businesses, and in April 2020, the Cabinet approved a partial revision of the Electricity Business Act, including an obligation for electric transmission and distribution companies to develop disaster coordination plans and a new support system for renewable energy introduction. In April 2020, the Cabinet approved the Energy Supply Resilience Bill. If the existing power system is used as it is, global warming caused by environmental destruction and other factors will further accelerate, and it is said that the average temperature of the entire Earth will increase by up to 4.8 degrees Celsius by 2100, increasing the possibility of various problems such as rising sea levels, flooding, larger typhoons, and reduced crop yields as a result. In order to prevent such a situation from occurring, we need to take action. In order to stave off such a current situation, the transition to renewable energy is an urgent necessity. DG Capital Group Incorporated was established in July 2020 to realize an energy society with zero marginal cost for the era of renewable energy as the main power source, and to realize digital. The company was established in July 2020 to realize digital grid technology, in which distributed devices, like the Internet, interdependently operate and maintain an independent and functional power system through networks. One way to achieve a smooth transition to renewable energy is the digital grid router, developed by DG Capital Group Incorporated. This is the only technology of its kind in the world, patented in Japan and other countries around the world. With this router, renewable energy can be introduced without adversely affecting the existing power grid. There is no need to install a new power grid, as the digital grid router can simply be installed on the existing grid. The introduction of this router will bring various benefits, such as local production for local consumption of energy, lower local electricity rates, and in the future, the ability to record electricity trading history, which will allow free trading of electricity. However, the most important advantage is still that blackouts during emergencies can be prevented by installing the system throughout the city and at evacuation centers. This will make it possible to create a city that is resilient to disasters. DG Capital Group Incorporated has been working with the Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry METI and the Ministry of the Environment MOE on a number of joint projects using these technologies. In 2023, DG Capital Group Incorporated was selected as one of the MOE's 100 regions ahead of the curve in decarbonization and established a regional energy company on Okinawa Island in Kagoshima Prefecture. In Okinawa Island, a digital grid router has been installed together with Chinatown and Watamari Town to microgrid the entire island for the purpose of local production and local consumption of electricity. We are also committed to providing solutions, including proposals for the installation of digital grid routers, not only on Okinawa Island, but also in remote islands and other areas where power shortages are becoming more serious and where power restoration is slow in the event of a disaster. Taking the opportunity of our achievements in Okinawa Island, we will develop urban planning that incorporates digital grid planning into the Japanese mainland, including digitalization of infrastructure management and popularization of smart houses. DG Capital Group has established a structure for the diffusion of digital grid routers and the creation of zero-carbon cities, and is promoting a local creation project based on the rural enterprise model. We are working with the government to realize a zero-carbon city, to realize the SDGs, and to create a better city that is resilient to disasters. DG Capital Group Incorporated will take the lead and contribute to the next generation of urban development.